One night at the restaurant where I worked, a woman spent an entire meal humiliating a brand new waiter. She mocked him, insulted him, and bragged that she was a trainer at another location of our restaurant. What she didn't know was that by the end of that night, she would lose her employee discount, get reported to her manager, and possibly lose her job, all because she decided to bully the wrong server. Hi everyone, my name's Anoop. And today, I want to tell you a story from back when I was working my way through nursing school. This happened in 2015. At the time, I worked as a waitress in a small restaurant. Now, this place was a little different from most restaurants. They didn't advertise at all. No billboards, no commercials, nothing. The restaurant relied completely on word of mouth. If people had a good experience, they told their friends. And that's how the restaurant stayed popular, which meant one thing mattered more than anything else: respect. Respect for the guests, respect for the staff, and respect for the restaurant itself. By the time this story happened, I'd been working there for several months. I knew the menu well, I understood how the restaurant flowed during busy nights, and management trusted me enough to help new servers when they started working the floor. I wasn't officially a trainer, but when a new server started their first few shifts, I was usually nearby to help if things got overwhelming. Because in restaurants, things get overwhelming very quickly. One of the newer servers was an older guy who had just joined the team. He was a little shy, a little awkward, and very nervous about making mistakes, which honestly is completely normal for new servers. But he was trying his best. He asked questions, he listened carefully, and everyone liked him. On the night this happened, his section was right next to mine, which made it easy for me to keep an eye on things. It was his first night running a full section by himself, so I expected things might get chaotic, but I was ready to jump in if needed. What none of us expected was the table he would get. A group of about 6 people walked in, all in their 20s, lots of attitude. You know the type. The kind of group that walks in already acting like they're searching for something to complain about. A little while later, the new server came over to me looking confused and worried. He asked me, "Hey, they're asking for something called XYZ, but I don't think that's on our menu." I checked. He was right. It wasn't. Apparently, one woman at the table was insisting that another location of our restaurant made it all the time, and since we had the ingredients, she expected us to make it for her. Now, technically, I could have told him to say no, but it was his first night handling his own section. He was already nervous, so I told him something simple. Ask the kitchen. If the cooks are okay with making it, then it's fine. If not, I'll go talk to the table. Luckily, the cooks didn't mind. It was basically just a wrap using ingredients we already had, so no big deal, from our side at least. But apparently that moment taught the leader of the table something. She realized she could push him around, because from that moment forward, every time he returned to the table, she demanded something else. More napkins, extra sauce, different drinks, more utensils, another request, then another, then another. And the moment he brought one thing, she asked for something else. It never stopped. I could see the panic building on his face, so I gave him a small nod. That was our signal, and I started quietly helping his other tables, refilling drinks, checking on guests, running food, basically keeping his section functioning while he was stuck dealing with that one nightmare table. This went on for their entire meal. They demanded constant attention, they were impatient, and they didn't show even a little kindness. By the time they finished eating, the poor guy looked completely exhausted, so I pulled him aside and said something important. Listen, they might not tip, but I reassured him his other tables had been taken care of, and I wouldn't be touching the tips from those. Honestly, he looked like he might quit right there. Being treated like that by customers is hard enough, but it gets worse when the customer works in the same industry. And that's exactly what happened, because the table stayed late. They were the last table in our entire section. And that's when he came over to me again, looking confused. He asked me, "Hey, how do I apply an employee discount?" I paused. Wait, employee? And that's when he explained. Apparently, the woman leading the table had spent the entire meal mocking him. She told him she was a trainer at another location of our restaurant, and she kept saying he was the worst waiter she had ever seen. No wonder she expected special treatment. But it didn't stop there. Now she was claiming multiple birthdays at the table, which meant free cake, and she demanded the birthday song immediately. At that point, I was furious.
not annoyed, furious. This guy was trying his best, and someone from the same industry was humiliating him for fun. So I told him something simple. Prep the cakes, but don't take them out yet. Then I went to find my manager. Now, our managers were amazing, truly rare in the restaurant world. They always supported their staff. I gave him a quick explanation of everything that had happened, the rude behavior, the fake birthdays, the insults, and the so-called trainer. My manager listened carefully. Then he smiled slightly and said, "Go ahead." Then he grabbed the employee number she had given for the discount and walked into the office. Apparently, he had a phone call to make. Meanwhile, I ran around the restaurant gathering every employee I could find. Servers, hosts, cooks, even the dishwasher. Half the restaurant was already closing, so people were available. I gave them the fastest explanation possible, and then I told them the plan. Finally, I turned to the nervous server and said, "All right, let's bring out the cakes." What happened next was honestly the biggest birthday song that restaurant had probably ever seen. 6 cakes were placed on the table, one in front of every seat. The leader of the table had the most satisfied smirk on her face. She looked so proud of herself. And then we started singing. And when I say singing, I mean we sang as loud as humanly possible. Remember, their table was in the corner, so the sound bounced right back at them. Dozens of restaurant workers screaming the birthday song at full volume. Even my ears hurt. Their smiles disappeared instantly. Hands flew up to cover their ears. Some of them were actually flinching. But we kept going, louder and louder. And that birthday song suddenly felt very, very long. Even now, almost 10 years later, that moment still makes me smile. But the best part happened after the song ended. While we were singing, my manager had been making phone calls. Yes, he called the manager at the restaurant where she worked and explained exactly how she had behaved. When the song ended, she walked up to the host desk expecting her employee discount. Instead, my manager handed her the phone. Her boss was on the other end. The moment she realized what was happening, she started crying. She tried to explain herself, tried to justify everything, but it didn't matter. Her employee number had already been verified, and the general manager had already been informed. She didn't get her discount, and from what we heard later, she didn't keep her job either. Now, maybe she found work somewhere else, maybe she convinced someone to hire her again. I don't know. But I know this. That night, one cruel person learned something very important. Restaurant workers take care of each other, and sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply singing. Very, very loudly. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe for more real revenge stories just like this one. And trust me, some of the next ones are even crazier.